CSIS 1430 is filmed before a live studio audience.
Okay, so we have this text here. Let's make that div that it's inside of. So divs will make them have a height of 200 pixels. Don't need this body HTML stuff anymore, and we'll leave that the way it is. Okay, except I want a color on it. Okay, there we go. That is the height of the div there. Let's make it like 100, and we'll make the width 300. And now look what happened here. That div is very small, but the text just flows right out of it. Okay? It's overflowing, right? To make the height a little bit more, like 500. And it's just sticking right out of the box, okay? And we don't want that, or maybe we do, depending on what we're trying to do here, depending on what our page is all about and whatever. There's a really easy way to fix this to where that doesn't happen, right? I'm going to turn off the background color now since we have this nice white, this teal. And what's interesting about this, I didn't solve the problem, but the text is still here, right? You just can't see it because it's white. The reason I did that is because I want to show you, if you're not aware of this overflow problem, you would think everything's fine, but you couldn't put anything here because there's already text there. This would mess you up, right? So let's put that background back on it so we can see it, and then we'll talk about the fix. So if you didn't know about the overflow, that could really mess things up. All you have to do is on the div, right? The div has content in it and it's got stuff overflowing out of it. So I'm going to turn the overflow to hidden, and when I refresh, it hides it. Now it's not down here anymore, right? But that looks exactly the same as it did a second ago, right? When we had this gone, that looks exactly the same as it did a minute ago. The difference is there's no text down here now. It's inside of the box, okay? Now, why would you want to do that? Because you can't get a hold of the content now, right? Depends on what this is. Maybe this is just an excerpt on your page of a longer article and you just want to show them the first few lines. You can do that, and they just click and it takes them to the actual full article. That's one thing. But you can also put a scroll bar on it by making overflow scroll. And now there's a nice little scroll bar right there, and you can see it. Okay. There's also a horizontal one here. We're not using it because the content isn't wide enough to be messing things up. But if I made that paragraph to be wider than the actual div, so width 400, now I have to scroll both ways. Now this is not necessarily the best design in the world, but there are use cases for it. Okay. So you can scroll this way or that way. Now you can also do auto. And what auto does is it will put a scroll bar on there if it needs one. Okay, so let's go back to scroll and we'll look at the difference. Notice here that there is a horizontal scroll bar, but it doesn't work because there's no need for it, right? So we have it set to scroll at the moment, line 9. So it shows up scroll here because it needs to be there. But if I put auto, then it will get rid of this horizontal scroll bar down there because it's not, what's the point of having one that doesn't work anyway, right? So that's what it does with auto. It just puts the scroll bars where it needs it. If suddenly the width here became 400 again, then that scroll bar would magically appear. Okay? Feeling okay about that? There's also overflow X and overflow Y. Okay? If you're gonna put the same property or value on both of them, then just use overflow. But if you want to do each one different, then you can do that. For example, maybe you want the overflow X to be hidden and you want the overflow Y to have the scroll bar. So now you can't scroll left to right, which maybe that's what you need for your particular site, even though the content is scooted over to the right and you can't see it because you've taken that scroll bar away, but you can control those individually is the point. Okay, any questions about those? They're pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot there, but there are some cases where you'll have to deal with it, and I'll show you one particular one that you guys will probably run into and maybe already have. And let's go with, we'll just put divs inside of here, class equals outer again, and we'll just put a few divs. Okay, and let's style these divs up. And I have those 4 divs and it's pushing the outer box down because of the size of those divs, right? If I made those divs a little smaller, a little bigger, that green would grow, that teal would grow. But when you float those divs, Where's the box? Where'd the teal go? Disappeared. Okay. So I only floated the outer, the inner divs, right? I didn't float the outer. I didn't float the teal. In fact, let's put border 2 pixels, solid, purple. And there's the div right there, right? And if you look really closely, can you see that little bit of a gap there between the 2 purple lines? Can you see that? Okay, the border, the box is collapsed. It actually collapsed. The reason it collapsed is because when you float stuff inside of a box, it pulls it out of the flow of things. And so now, from the border, purple border box's perspective, it has no content. And so it just collapsed, right? And since it collapsed, then it looks like that, and it looks like everything came out of the box, because it essentially did. Well, it seems counterintuitive, but if you apply a box sizing border box to that purple div, not border box, I'm sorry, overflow hidden, and when you refresh it, notice the purple, you see the purple border down there now, it actually expands the box back to the behavior you would expect, okay? That seems like a counterintuitive example of the overflow being hidden, and it's one that's always bothered me because it doesn't seem like, normally the whole point of the overflow hidden is to hide the stuff that's sticking out. Well, this now does something a little weirder and a little different. It's a little quirk with the language, but you have to know it because that will happen on occasion. If you've tried with your menus, your navigation menu homework, to float the LIs to the right, and you also want to put a background color on your UL, you'll run into this very problem. Okay? All right. Questions about overflow?